Welcome back, everyone, to the From Crisis to Justice podcast. I'm your host, Parag Amin. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Josh Cadillac. He is a real estate coach, national speaker, and author who trains real estate professionals how to close for life by building lasting success through extensive knowledge. His extensive method combines the education real estate professionals need to survive in this industry with the tools to convert that knowledge into rapport, credibility, and trust. Josh, thank you so much for being on today.
Parag, it's totally my pleasure, but thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So listen, tell us how you got into what you do and why you got into what you do, into the real estate space.
Um, let's call it pain, suffering, and desperation. I was a real estate investor, had restaurants, and actually had opened a couple of restaurants going into 2008, and the whole world came to an end, basically, as far as in Southeast Florida, the market that we were in. We had a massive downturn. It was basically the epicenter of this real estate crisis, and in the process of that happening, not only was the commercial real estate that I held no longer able to support its own debt service. Also, the restaurants that we were in stopped being, people stopped going out to eat. And so, despite the fact that we had a good product, we had a good system, and everything was set up well, we weren't over leveraged or anything like that. I mean, like not technically over leveraged. I mean, I suppose you're technically over leveraged if things turn south and you can't pay your debt service. But I mean, based upon any technical method of real estate analysis, we were not over leveraged. We were in a good position. We wound up losing everything. And so I had to start all over from scratch and started in real estate and took a ton of real estate classes and got to be really good at the real estate business, got to be very successful, and realized all the things that I was learning in the real estate classes was not the reason why I was being successful in real estate. It was stuff that I learned outside of that, stuff I learned through pain and suffering, through stuff I learned from other businesses, stuff I learned from my father that prepared me to actually be successful in business. And so I realized that agents were being given, I don't want to say bad information, but it was like being taught by somebody who read a book about how to do something, as opposed to being taught by somebody who actually knows how to do it. And so as a practitioner, as somebody that had to actually take and make this work, and I didn't have a choice, I started writing things to take and help agents solve that problem, how to do sales the right way, how to stop chasing paychecks and start closing customers for life. And so that's what the genesis was, I suppose.
Wow. So the restaurants you had in '08, was that your first set of businesses?
No, I grew up working in one of my father's businesses, which was a cafeteria operation. So food service is something. We had a catering business as well. We had industrial real estate. We had businesses. I always grew up around business. I was always going to work in the family business. There was never a question about that. It was just that after my father passed, which was 2002, I sort of the helm was passed to me, if you will, and we started expanding beyond, kind of my father was sick toward the end of his life, so we really kind of stayed in our own shell, and we sort of pushed out of that. And then the years following that, started the restaurants, got into some more, bought some more real estate, and did a little bit more aggressive investing, like younger people tend to do. It's young people are the ones that take and grow economies because they're the ones willing to take the risks. And we got caught.
Wow. So in terms of moving from food service, where your father was, where you were, and then pivoting into real estate, the '08, '09 time, some would argue it's a really good, opportune time. Others might argue, listen, it's one of the toughest times to get into real estate. So what made you pivot into real estate? And can you talk a little bit about the art of the pivoting from one venture into another? How did you choose it? Why did you choose it? And why do you think that pivoting is so important to success?
Well, I mean, it's very easy to get trapped in your own gravity, if you will. It's very easy to get trapped into what you know of yourself doing. When the shit hits the proverbial fan, you can no longer stay in that comfort shell. So I was forced out of that. The reason why I pivoted to real estate was it was something that I knew from investing for years with my father. We were in real estate when we got hurt, so I knew how it worked. I mean, when I assessed the things that I had, that the path to entering would be easiest, it was the one that showed itself as I had the most foundation here. So it would take less remedial work for me to become successful in this thing. And so I thought that that would be the closest thing that I created a path to get back to where we were, what we were losing in the process of losing everything. So that's the reason why it was basically a self-assessment, and the results of that being, hey, this is where your skills and what you know best lines up. This is probably the place where it's going to be the best path forward with the available resources that you bring to the table.
I see. Okay.
And so the other piece of that, obviously, Parag, is what you mentioned, which is the power of the pivot. Um, I think for myself, I didn't really give myself an option not to pivot. I was raised that if there's a problem, it's got to get solved. And so not solving it is not a viable answer, right? And the problem was, we were losing everything. Money had to come in. Somebody had to go out and produce. And so the pivot was, if you take off the table quitting, if that's not a viable option, if maintaining the status quo ceases to be viable and quitting isn't allowed, well, now there's only one choice left, which is to pivot. And you have to pivot and force. You have to pivot with everything you have. You can't take and have one foot in and one foot out, because the ship is sinking. There's no helicopter coming to rescue you. So guess what? You better start swimming, right? And so the pivot was kind of forced on me. And the reason why it worked, I think, is because I didn't give myself any other options.
Wow. Okay. And so then why real estate compared to any other venture you could have gone into?
It's the thing I knew best. It's the thing I knew best. I mean, I had already done real estate. My father we finished liquidating a large portfolio of his in New York of real estate to come down and move fully to Florida, which is where we were living. We had bought some commercial real estate, bought an office building, bought a large industrial warehouse facility, and ran those for years. So, I mean, I knew leasing. I knew how all of this stuff worked. And so once again, I thought it would be the lowest hanging fruit, if you will, of the skill set that I had, and where I could make the kind of money that I needed to take and build back what was lost in the housing crisis.
Yeah. And did you have mentors or guides along the way? And if you did, how did you find them?
That has always been one of the great tough pieces for me, is finding folks that could be mentors. I mean, I could tell you that in my life, learning to be an electrician, I had a guy that was a great electrician, took me under his wing, showed me the ropes. In the trades, I had a lot of mentors. My father was a tremendous mentor when he was alive. I mean, his foot had a permanent resting place on my backside. I would say that his boot was applied to my butt many, many times throughout the course of my life. But always because he didn't want me to make dumb mistakes that could be avoided. He wanted to avoid pain and suffering. He would rather cause me some intermittent pain and suffering to help me to avoid the big pain and suffering that came later. And I always look back and I'm tremendously grateful for that. The tough part for me, Parag, has honestly been finding people whose motor I respect enough to listen to, because typically we start talking and they're coming to me for advice by the time the thing's done, because we're pushing so hard and we're getting so much done on this side. So it's been hard to find people that I trust and respect enough when it comes to the business side. There's a few that I've had, but it's been a lesson I actually learned on my own podcast from one of my guests. I interviewed a gentleman and he told me that if he could give one piece of advice, it was to take and try to find ways to say yes to things. And I often find myself looking for reasons to disqualify something, because if I can disqualify it, means I don't have to take and give it any more of the limited bandwidth that's left, that we're not pulling in 5 million different directions to try to get done all the things that we're getting, podcasts and speaking 200 plus days a year, and the real estate business and the investment fund and the construction company and all the stuff that we have going on. But finding ways to say yes to things, I think, is just a really, really powerful tool, because it makes you take and really consider, hey, if this isn't viable, why isn't it viable? Could we make it viable? What could we do to make it work? And so recently I've been able to find a couple of people who have come in and been able to take it and help some, and offer advice. It's not that I think that I'm anything all that special. It's just that finding people that I can actually bring value to what we're doing already. They don't come with a lot of ideas, unfortunately, a lot of times, and that makes it tough to justify allocating time and resources to what they have to say if they can't bring value. I want to find those people, but I want to make sure that they actually bring the goods.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. And you and I have talked before about this, and you and I share that along with a few other things in common in terms of wanting to not only bring value yourself and deeply committed to bringing value to your clients, but also wanting to surround yourself with people who are like-minded like that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, with your businesses, with the restaurants, now with the real estate business, sometimes inevitably lawsuits or legal issues become a problem. And so have you or your businesses faced any kind of legal issues? And if you did, how did you handle that?
Um, the one that comes to mind what was actually an ethics issue that we had. It was an ethical complaint that was brought against me, and it was for something that I flat out I knew I did the wrong thing for the right reasons. It was during the. I mean, thank God this thing has already been fully litigated, and I'm on the other side of it to talk about it because I'm not particularly proud of what I did, but I'm at the same time I'm proud of what I did. Because I mean, like it's a rookie move, and I know I shouldn't have done it when I did it. I knew I was opening myself up to liability, but what happened was a gentleman came into my office. This is during the housing crisis, maybe circa 2011, 2012. And at that point, I had gone from, didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground when I started to now I am the short sale expert. I am the guy that everybody is bringing the short sale. If you don't want to handle it, you take it to Josh. He gets it done, right? So I knew the entire process. I was very good at getting him. I was carrying 70, 80 active listings at a time, doing a lot of business. This guy comes into me and he's a grown man and he's in tears telling me, I gave my listing to this other agent and it's been 6 months. They took the listing for a year, 6 months. They haven't shown the property once. They don't return my phone calls. I can't get in contact with them no matter what there's no way to reach them. I said, well, look, I can't sell it for you. I can't list it for you if it's with somebody else. You have to find some way to get in touch with them to cancel them. So he tried. I tried. Everybody tries. Nothing. He's like, the bank is going to take it from me. I don't want this foreclosure to happen. So I said, all right, I'll do it. I'll find a way to take it out. I'll deal with the other agent. When they come back screaming later on, I'll take it. I'll deal with it. And so it's the wrong thing. I mean, I know I'm doing what the rules say not to do. I'm breaking the rules. But I also know that the rules are first and foremost written to protect the consumer. And so I know I'm on the right side of the rules, but I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm on the wrong side of the rules, but I'm doing the right thing. I'm obeying the intent of the law, but not the letter. And so, sure enough, within a few weeks, I had an offer on the property, had it under contract. Within, I think, 3-4 months, we got the short sale done. It was actually, we got it done very, very quickly. It was one of the faster ones we ever got done. And the day that the commission checks came in, so did a letter from the other brokerage, who we had never heard from at this point. Never. No contact whatsoever. The day it closed, we get a letter from them demanding the commission. So they couldn't be bothered to take and communicate at all, but they were tracking the closing on it to make sure that they got paid because they had conned somebody into giving them a listing that they didn't service. So now, and I often wonder, it's a question I'm going to ask you, Parag, because I know how I felt when I got that. I know the anxiety that I found myself in, knowing that I was going to have to go and defend myself. And you know what that process does time and representing people, does it, I mean, do you feel that? Like, is there a sense of that for you on your side of, like, oh man, this is going to be, I don't know who's going to win this thing, or does it get easier with time?
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh. I think it does get easier at times with time, but it doesn't go away. Meaning, I think any great lawyer or any great professional never gets so comfortable that it's completely comfortable, meaning that it's completely stress free. Because I think a certain level of stress is required if you really care about what you're doing with anything. There's an aspect of dealing with stress effectively, though, such that you're still in control of the situation and moving things forward effectively, because I think there's also different levels of stress, meaning
Sure.
somebody can be so stressed out that they're ineffective. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to move or what kind of move to make. And my clients come to me with an expectation that I know what to do and I can handle it. And so in terms of handling cases over and over and over, thousands of cases now successfully for clients, it does become easier in the sense of I know what to do and when to do it. But the sense of the justice system there, it's an adversarial system. So there's an aspect to anything that's adversarial where things can change unexpectedly. There are variables outside of your control that add uncertainty to the whole equation. So there is that aspect of always wanting to do the best for my clients and being stressed about making sure that some of those uncontrollable variables are still controlled to the maximum extent possible, and that there's a contingency plan to the extent that there is an unforeseen variable that pops up.
Mitigated and planned around. Yeah. No, I hear that. That's the thing. And I've often wondered. I mean, obviously, it's different because in a situation like this, it's me that's on the line. But that adversarial nature, that the fact that it's going to be a fight and it's going to be nasty, and they're going to say nasty things, and they're going to play dirty pool is, and you're walking into it, and it's just the beginning. But I will never forget going into that arbitration, that meeting that I had to go into, or mediation, I guess it was, because as an agent, we submit to mediation before we litigate. And I had to go before the real estate board, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, I really genuinely, like, I know I did the wrong thing, so I'm coming in guilty, and I just don't know how bad am I going to lose my am I going to lose my license and my ability that they can protect myself, or to provide for myself, like, what's going to happen. And I was really fortunate. The meeting went. I had a letter from the previous the seller that I helped, because he couldn't physically come. He had moved away, but I had as much as I could, and they totally found for me, like 100% found for me. There was nothing for the other side. But I mean, I'm telling you, the weeks between that letter coming in and getting it done, man, was some of the most tense, difficult, like, wake you up in the middle of the night kind of thing.
100% agree with you. And it's interesting because with lawyers and the client, for example, when I go through a trial or an arbitration, waiting on the decision is agonizing. The client and us are going through essentially the same thing, because we put it all on the line too for our clients and wanting to make sure that we get a great result for the client. Now, of course, it's ultimately the client's outcome that occurs. But, I think that the best professionals are invested with their clients.
I think it's the right way to do it. I think that ethically, that's really the only way to take and do this thing. Because this is something that I learned when I was writing my ethics course with my brother. My brother's a philosophy professor, and when I wrote my ethics course with him, he was explaining what ethics are, and I was like, because I've taken a bunch of ethics renewals now. I mean, you're in the law, so ethics is a big one for you guys, right? And he said, I said, as we're writing the class, I said, look, I want to write an ethics class. I just don't want it to suck. And because they do. I mean, like, we need 3 hours of ethics every 2 years. If you can't score Ambien and you need to take a nap, that's 3 hours of nap time right there. Because it's the same class every stinking time. They pull up the rules and they read the rules to you. I said to him, that's what they do. He said, you're kidding. That's not what ethics is at all. I said, you're kidding. I've taken 9 ethics renewals now, and that's what I thought it was, because that's all they do. He's like, no, ethics has never been the study of the rules. Ethics has been the study of how, as a human being, you should behave to live a life that you can be proud of. Ethics is actually a selfish study. How should I be to be able to live the kind of life that I want to live, to be able to look back on it and be proud of what I've done? And as it turns out, treating people the right way and doing things the right way is the only route to that. That's how human beings, based upon our extensive study since the Greeks of human beings, how human beings actually live a life that's the most fulfilling. And so, getting my head around that is a big part of even why, you know, I've made the choices that I have in business that I do, and why, I prioritize the customer first, because I know by prioritizing them, it allows me to run the kind of business that I can look back on and be proud of, and that I know my forebears, I know my father, the things that matter to him. He could look down on the business that I run and say, "That's my boy. That's the kind of business I'm proud of you running." Right? It's part of what this whole thing is, right? Not just
Yeah.
us, but those that came before us.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I love that. I mean, so let me ask you, from that experience that you went through, the ethical crisis that you went through, would you do it again if you were put in that position, or do you think you do things differently, and if so, how and why?
I think maybe, I would do things a little bit differently, in the sense that I would reach out maybe to the board and try to get a finding of abandonment from the other agent. I didn't know there was the mechanical process to maybe try to get the other agent out beforehand. I didn't know it. The agent didn't know it. It's not a well-known thing. So, I mean, they didn't hold it against me that I didn't know. But yeah, would I take and help the customer first? Absolutely. I got a chance later on to meet the mediator outside of that, and he remembered me. And I said to him, look, just between you, me, and the lamppost. I know you're not supposed to talk about after the fact or whatever, but like, was I righteous in what I did? He said, look, the code of ethics was written first to protect the customer that was being harmed by the action. And so that made me feel better. Would I be worried about getting in front of a letter of the law mediator? Absolutely. My testes have been in a little bag being carted off away from me. Yes, I could have gotten clipped pretty hard, but that wasn't the outcome, and so I'm grateful for it. I'd be nervous doing it again. I try to look for maybe a better way, but yeah, if it was my back was against the wall, you take care of people first.
Yeah, 100%. Part of that is the the lack of knowledge, the lack of professional guidance, right? And so, unfortunately, a lot of people, a lot of business owners will get into these issues where they just don't know. They don't know who to turn to. They don't know what the right move is, and then they have to make a decision. So they just make a decision in a way blindly, just hoping it's the right decision. So, can you talk a little bit about the importance of having the right professional guidance to make you or help you make the right moves?
You know, that's kind of the big piece, right? Um, my job is to be good at the thing that I do, and we get into trouble when we go outside the scope of the thing that we know and do well. And that's why we have professionals. These folks train themselves in these other areas that touch what we do, but are outside the scope of what we do. And so it's kind of like when people come to me and are going to tell me how to take and do real estate, who are just consumers. And I'm like, I know you watched HGTV. I mean, for I know you've watched 4 episodes of Perry Mason, and like, but you have no idea what actually goes in to making this cake. Just because you watch Julia Childs bake doesn't mean you know how to be a chef at a 5-star restaurant. Like, they're different things. And so, if you're the kind of person that needs open heart surgery and is telling the surgeon how you want to be kept awake so you can make the incision, I think you need to have your head examined, right? You need to take and recognize and step back and say, bring the professionals in and say, hey, look, guys, this is the situation. What's the best course of action? They'll say, oh, you didn't know about the PTS 16B form? If you just fill out the PTS 16B form, the problem goes away. What's been keeping you up at night for weeks, losing sleep and getting your hair going? And there's the form to fix it, right? And so, yeah, I mean, the self-help thing, stow that garbage. Life's too short. Take and pay somebody who spent their life figuring out how to fix the problem that you just ran into that's outside the scope of what you do. Totally agree, Parag. You got to bring the pros in.
Yeah, and do you think it's more expensive to bring in a pro early, or do you think it? Do you think it's more expensive or less expensive to have a pro come in early to help guide?
It usually is going to cost less to bring them in early, so you avoid the stupid mistakes. I mean, the problem really is, I mean, there's a case I don't want to talk about it, just because it's a friend of mine, but he was dealing with his ex-wife or soon to be ex-wife. His wife had left him, taken his kid, and so he sent a letter to his wife, and in the letter, he absolutely just torpedoed his ability to be on equal footing with his wife when it came to divorce because of, just trying to take and admit and, just trying to come clean and begging and pleading and all this kind of stuff. If he would have just, and I was the whole time, like, don't you want to wait for your attorney to come back from vacation before you don't send the letter, please don't send the letter. He sends the letter. And now it's, months and months of dealing with consequences from something that was, he thought, he's, how could there be a problem with any of this? I'm like, I don't know, because this is not what I do for a living. You have somebody that does this for a living. Ask them that question, And so, yeah, I mean, real world consequences. Guys, it's not time for amateur hour. You can make mistakes that you can't unmake. You can ring a bell that can't be unrung, and then you jeopardize your position going forward. Your negotiating position is compromised, and you're going to get a worse result because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so much of business is just having that right guidance and having the foresight to be able to make the right moves at the right time. Let me ask you this: for what is the best piece of advice you've gotten and who gave it to you?
Oh man, I'll give you two. One I already gave you earlier on. I'll say it again. That's why I want to give you the second one, so I can give me at least a little biodiversity, because the other one was fresh in my mind. But my father used to tell me all the time, by the inch it's a cinch, by the yard it's hard. All right. And so I don't care how big the problem is. I don't care how big the thing is. Break it down into the constituent components. Take and figure out what the smallest piece of it needs to be, and do the hell out of every little piece of it, every step of the way. And next thing you know, you got the bones of an elephant laying there. You ate the elephant, right? Um, and so that's one. And then the other one that we talked about earlier is find ways to say yes to things. That's been such a game changer for me in the last few years. It was actually my uncle. I had him on, a successful pharmacist, a guy I respect. Actually, I'm in his house right now in Wichita, Kansas, um, attending a conference that I'm speaking at, and finding ways to say yes to things is such a powerful tool. Yeah, there's a million reasons we can't do it, but what if we could? In what world could we do that thing? How could we? This is where innovation comes from. This is where ideas, new ideas and new ways, better ways of doing things. And what I love about a Parag really is because it's a piece of advice that my father and many other entrepreneurs have given me in different ways. My father used to say, you come in, you look at everything, and could we do it differently? Could we turn the trays on their side? How could we do it better? He says, always come in looking at your business for a better way. But this idea of how can we say yes to things, is same thing. Like, is there a way we can innovate to make what can't be done into something that can be done? So those are the things that front of mind for me. Those are the pieces of advice that if I could give listeners, I would say these are the ones that really move the needle in my life.
Yeah, let me ask you for some clarification on the find a way to say yes, because I've heard the opposite of that. Find a way to say no unless it's something you love. So can you clarify a little bit more about find a way to say yes means and in what contexts somebody should be saying yes?
So I recently got requested to come do a speaking engagement, and it was overlapping with something else that I needed to do. So I went in and I looked at the flight schedules. I looked at the speaking schedule, whatever. I figured out a way to get myself on a flight that's going to get me there. I'm going to get there at 1 o'clock in the morning. Going to hit the hotel, be there by about 2. I got to be up to teach for them by 8, but it can be done. So I'm going to do it, because why wouldn't I? It can get done, And so what? I'll get 5 hours of sleep. Okay, wouldn't be the first time, right? I'll get some sleep on the plane. We'll find a way to make it work. Um, and so I would say that people all too often are always on the lookout for an excuse good enough to BS themselves into believing that they don't have to do it. Right? The other day, I was supposed to be in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They canceled my flight from Atlanta to Chattanooga at midnight. I had to be there to teach at 8 a.m. So I rented a car and I drove to Chattanooga and I got 3 hours of sleep. And I taught two of the best classes I've ever taught back to back from 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock. Got another plane and flew home. Right? Um, why? Because my standards for my business, the way that I find to say yes, is if it can be done, we get it done. That's what we do here. We make the impossible possible. If it can be done, we find a way to do it. And so I gave my word I was going to be there. If there was a way, well, I mean, but your flight was canceled. That's a good enough excuse. It didn't matter. The fact of the matter is it could be done. So we got it done. So that's what I say, find a way to say yes to things. You know, somebody sends me an email. Hey, I'd like to work with you on this thing. Well, let me take a look. Maybe this does me. Maybe this is a good thing, as opposed to immediately, let's throw that away. Take a look. See if it's a good idea. And that's the problem is there's so many bad ideas. It ropes you into looking at a lot of bad ideas, but it also keeps you on the lookout for the good one. And so I think that's what it is. It's looking for the thing that's going to move the needle and make it better.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, Josh, if somebody wants to work with you or check out some of your social media because you put out great content, how can people find you?
Website is going to be closedforlife.com. You can get the new book is there. The book is Closed for Life. It's all about how to stop, chasing paychecks like so many people in sales do, and how to start closing customers for life. Social media, Josh Cadillac or Josh D Cadillac on Instagram. You can find me there. Those are the big ones.
Yeah. Okay. And just to clarify for the listeners, that's close, CLOSE, the number 4, life.com.
Actually, the book title is FOR, but if you go Close for Life or the number or the word 4 or the number 4, both get you the website. I bought them both. I was like,
Great.
it's going to happen. So I found a way to say yes to both websites.
I love it. I love it. That's amazing. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some of your wisdom, some of your hard fought lessons, because I'm sure that they're going to be immensely useful to our listeners. And I always enjoy spending time with you. So thank you.
Parag, thanks for having me on, bud. It was always great hanging out with you, my friend.